This story is about a quiet maintenance man at a prestigious martial arts academy in Denver who gets humiliated in front of an entire class until a single moment reveals he's not just a janitor, but a former elite military fighter with secrets powerful enough to dismantle an entire system. What begins as a cruel demonstration turns into a reckoning for everyone watching, forcing them to question who really deserves their respect. Hey, old man, why don't you show the class how you mop the mat? Or are you afraid you'll slip on your own dignity? Carl Dawson's voice rang out like a slap in the silent dojo, each syllable laced with showmanship. The students chuckled, some out of discomfort, others because they didn't know better. Carl was their sensei, their black belt instructor, their leader. If he laughed, they laughed. But Nathan Briggs didn't even look up. He kept polishing the edge of the tatami mat, with the same patient rhythm he'd maintained for the past 4 months. Quiet, unbothered, as if the mat itself deserved his full attention. He wore navy work pants, a faded hoodie with Briggs Facilities embroidered on the chest, and the posture of a man who had learned long ago that most things aren't worth responding to. That only made Carl push harder. "Come on," he said, walking toward Nathan with exaggerated steps. "You've been working here how long? 4 months. And you've never once stepped on the mat. Don't be shy. We're all family here." A few students laughed louder, now relieved they weren't the target. Nathan finally glanced up. His face was calm, almost too calm for someone being mocked in public. At 45, his eyes carried the weight of someone who had seen systems built and destroyed people praised and forgotten. He stood up slowly, placing the cleaning rag into the bucket beside him. "I'm not trying to interrupt your class," he said, "just making sure the space stays clean for those who need it." Carl clapped mockingly. "That's a noble sentiment, really. But today's lesson is about hierarchy. And I think it's time these students learn that not all jobs are created equal." His voice dropped into something more performative. "You see, folks, martial arts isn't just about punches and kicks. It's about knowing your place in the order of things." The dojo shifted uncomfortably. Jessie Tran, a Vietnamese-American sociology grad student, and purple belt watched the exchange with a tight jaw. Something about this didn't sit right with her. Carl's lectures often danced near arrogance, but this felt personal. "You want to teach us about place?" Nathan asked, still with no anger in his tone. "Then you better be sure you know where you're standing." The sentence slipped out like a whisper, but it carried weight. Carl blinked, as if a part of him had registered a threat without understanding it. Nathan started to walk away. "No, no," Carl said, stepping forward now, fully performing. "Don't leave yet. I want you to step onto the mat just for a moment, just to show everyone how different training makes us." Nathan didn't move. Carl turned to the class. "You see, real fighters earn their space. They don't sweep it." Jessie clenched her fists. The room had fallen silent. This wasn't a lesson. It was a staged humiliation. A power play. Carl moved closer. "Come on, Briggs. What are you afraid of? I promise no hard hits. Just a little demonstration." Nathan's body barely shifted, but something about his stance changed his weight, lowered imperceptibly, his feet subtly adjusted like roots, finding new ground. "You sure that's what you want?" he asked softly. The question made Carl's grin waver for a fraction of a second. "But ego is a blinding thing." "Absolutely," he replied. "Let's show them what separates the trained from the help." Jessie could feel it in her chest, now, that creeping sense that something was deeply wrong here. That something was about to happen. No one could take back. Carl gestured to the class. "Circle up time for a quick reminder that discipline beats manual labor." 8 students moved into formation. Some were excited. Others looked at Nathan and felt something they couldn't quite explain, like seeing a calm ocean right before a storm. As Nathan stepped onto the mat, the fluorescent lights caught something in his eyes. Not fire, not fury, just a silent promise. "You won't forget this." And for the first time since joining the academy, Jessie Tran pulled out her phone, not to text, but to record. Not for entertainment, but because her instincts told her this wasn't going to be just another Thursday night sparring lesson. What she didn't know was that she had just begun documenting the fall of a man and the return of a ghost no one saw coming. Is this even legal? One of the students whispered, eyes flicking between Carl and Nathan. No one answered. Jessie kept her phone steady, heart pounding, not because of fear, but because she suddenly understood that this wasn't just a fight. This was going to be a turning point. Nathan stood still in the center of the mat, hands at his sides, body relaxed like he'd just walked in off the street. But for those who knew what to look for, those who'd studied footage of elite fighters, war zone tactics, predator instincts, there was something unmistakable in the way he breathed. A rhythm, too calm, too precise. Carl squared up, feet shoulder-width apart, guard up like a textbook demo. "Don't worry," he said loud enough for everyone to hear. "I'll go easy on you, Briggs." Nathan just gave a single nod. No smile, no reaction, just an eerie steadiness. Carl lunged forward. His jab was clean, fast, and sharp years of teaching polished every angle. But as his fist extended, it met nothing. Nathan had shifted a fraction to the side, barely visible to the untrained eye. Carl's punch landed in air. Beginner's nerves. Carl mocked, resetting. He fired again, this time a quick 1-2 combo jab to straight. Nathan leaned back slightly, letting both fists pass in front of his chest, like shadows across a wall. No block, no counter, just clean, impossible avoidance. The air in the room changed. Jessie's fingers tightened on her phone. She'd studied motion analysis in undergrad. She knew when something was off, and Nathan's movements weren't just lucky. They were deliberate, tactical, a kind of efficiency you couldn't learn in self-defense class or from YouTube tutorials. This was training buried deep in muscle memory. Carl growled and pressed harder, throwing a quick hook aimed at Nathan's temple. And again, nothing. Nathan didn't flinch. He simply let the punch sweep by, ducking low with the kind of ease that said, "This is nothing new." That was the moment Carl's bravado cracked. It happened in the eyes. His pupils widened. His mouth tightened just a little. He'd expected to humiliate a janitor. He hadn't expected to miss. 3 more attacks. A jab feint, a low kick, a shoulder push. All missed. All avoided. "Why are you dancing around?" Carl barked, sweat already forming on his forehead. "You afraid to hit back?" Still no reply. Nathan stood upright again, calm as ever. "I told you," he said simply, "this wasn't going to go the way you planned." The students glanced at one another. The silence was thick, like the air before a storm front. Jessie pulled her phone slightly lower. Her mind was racing. Who was this man? After class, she'd looked him up once out of curiosity. Nothing came up. No social, no combat record, not even a LinkedIn. It was like Nathan Briggs didn't exist before arriving at the academy. Carl, desperate to regain control, tried humor. "Come on, folks. He's got good footwork for a guy who probably sweeps 400 square feet a day." A few students chuckled, but the laughter was hollow now. Jessie noticed the way Nathan's expression didn't change. Yet his foot inched forward, weight shifting. It was subtle, but it was preparation. A coiled spring hiding behind calm. Carl noticed too, but too late. He lunged again, trying to grapple. But as he reached out, Nathan twisted slightly, using Carl's own momentum to pivot him off balance. No strike, no aggression, just redirection. Carl stumbled and had to catch himself before falling. It was humiliating. And still, Nathan hadn't raised a fist. Jessie couldn't stop thinking, what kind of person avoids every attack with this much control and still chooses not to hit back? It was then that the door to the training room opened. Coach Alvarez, the owner of the academy, stepped halfway into the space, paused and leaned against the wall. He didn't say a word, just watched. Nathan noticed. He glanced briefly toward Alvarez. No signal passed between them, but Jessie caught the micro-expression on the coach's face, concern. Not for Nathan, but for Carl. Carl hadn't noticed yet. He was too busy breathing heavy, burning with embarrassment. "All right," he snapped. Enough of this. He stepped forward again, fast, reckless, angry. A right hook fueled more by pride than technique. That's when Nathan finally moved. Not with violence. Not even with force. He simply stepped inside Carl's range, placed a hand on his wrist mid-swing, and shifted his shoulder. Carl lost his balance instantly. The moment Nathan touched him, it was like something disconnected. His momentum turned against him. He spun sideways, stumbled, and crashed to the floor with a heavy thud. It wasn't a knockout. It was worse. A clean, effortless redirection that exposed everything. The room was dead quiet. Carl groaned on the mat, rolling onto his back. Nathan didn't gloat. He didn't pose. He simply stepped back and looked down, not with pity, but with clarity. The kind of look that says, "You need to understand what just happened." Jessie stopped recording. She'd gotten enough. But what she didn't expect was what came next, the moment that would change everything about this night. Coach Alvarez stepped forward and said quietly, "Briggs, haven't seen that technique since Okinawa." Every head turned. Carl sat up. "Wait." What Nathan finally looked up and answered, "I wasn't always just a janitor." Jessie felt something slide into place. A piece of a puzzle. And even though the room was still, everyone could sense that the real story was just beginning. Coach Alvarez's words hung in the air, like a slow-burning fuse. "Haven't seen that technique since Okinawa." The weight of it shifted something in the room. Jessie's jaw tightened as she stepped back slightly, feeling the air thin around her. Carl, still sitting on the mat, blinked several times, struggling to connect the dots. Okinawa. Why would a janitor, someone paid by the hour to mop sweat off the floors, know techniques exclusive to advanced military combatives? Nathan's posture hadn't changed. He still stood tall, composed, and somehow, still not aggressive. But there was now something unmistakably different in his presence. The kind of stillness that didn't just come from physical training, but from surviving something deeper. Something institutional. Carl finally broke the silence. "Wait, what do you mean? You saying you trained overseas?" Nathan looked at him. "I'm saying I didn't learn that in any dojo." Coach Alvarez stepped closer, his voice low, but firm. "Carl, enough." His eyes didn't leave Nathan. "I thought you looked familiar. You were with the 702nd, weren't you?" Nathan nodded once. "A long time ago." Jessie turned wide-eyed, looking from one man to the other. The 702nd. That was a military special tactics unit, high clearance, highly secretive. She remembered it vaguely from a documentary. They weren't just trained in combat. They were trained to eliminate threats before threats even knew they existed. Carl finally stood up, brushing off his uniform like the dust mattered more than his pride. "That still doesn't explain what you're doing here. If you were some elite fighter, why are you cleaning floors?" Nathan's eyes darkened, but not with shame. "Because sometimes," he said, "you get tired of hurting people." That shut Carl up. It shut everyone up. Jessie's heart pounded. That sentence, that quiet, almost invisible statement felt like a confession, a plea and a boundary, all in one. She stepped forward. "Sir, Mr. Briggs," she said cautiously, "what unit were you in exactly?" Nathan exhaled slowly. "I was with 732nd until 2011, after what happened in Phoenix Ridge." Jessie's eyes widened. That name she knew. Phoenix Ridge was infamous, an internal scandal where a military training exercise resulted in the deaths of 3 young recruits. The official reports said it was training failure, but several rumors hinted at something darker: excessive force cover-ups, psychological coercion. Nathan had just admitted he was there. Carl scoffed. "So what, you ran?" After that, Nathan's gaze didn't flicker. "No. I stayed. Long enough to testify. Long enough to get every single officer involved investigated. But by the time the dust settled, I had nowhere left to go." Jessie's stomach turned. "You were the whistleblower." Nathan nodded once. Suddenly, everything made sense. His quiet, his stillness, the way he never reacted to ridicule. He wasn't hiding out of fear, he was hiding out of exhaustion, out of survival. Carl took a step forward. "You're telling me I just got tossed by a washed-up military rat?" That was the wrong sentence. Coach Alvarez stepped between them, his tone sharp now. "Carl, stop. You've embarrassed yourself enough for one night." But Nathan raised a hand. Calm. "No, it's okay." He looked directly at Carl, voice even. "I'm not here to prove anything. But don't confuse humility with weakness. You'll learn that the hard way if you keep walking down the path you're on." Jessie had been filming again, quietly capturing the moment. But this time, it wasn't for evidence. It was for truth. For her thesis. For something bigger. Later that night, she sat in the back of her dorm room watching the footage again. Every movement, every sentence, the precision, the restraint. She opened her laptop and typed into a database restricted to sociology researchers and former military personnel. She found him in an archived report buried in an ethics investigation file. Briggs Nathaniel. Sergeant First Class. Decommissioned. Last active duty Phoenix Ridge. Filed complaint under sealed record. And in bold, transferred to civilian status under non-disclosure immunity. Jessie's eyes burned as she read the line again. She wasn't just witnessing a man in hiding. She was watching the aftermath of a soldier punished for telling the truth. The next morning, she brought the footage to Coach Alvarez. No caption. No pitch. Just silence. He watched it, face unreadable, and when it ended, he simply asked, "Did you post this online?" "No," she said. "But I might." He nodded slowly. "Give it time. Let the academy handle this first." Later that evening, a notice went out quietly to all students. Effective immediately, Sensei Carl Dawson is placed under administrative review, pending internal conduct evaluation. Carl didn't show up to training that week. Nathan still cleaned the mats. But this time, every student that passed him, every single one, offered a nod, a smile, or a quiet, "Thank you." And Jessie. She started rewriting her thesis. It was no longer called Power Dynamics in traditional martial arts spaces. She renamed it When Silence Fights Back, the Cost of Honor, in a World That Rewards Noise. But what she didn't yet know as she pressed save on the document was that Carl Dawson wasn't done. And neither was the system that had buried Nathan's truth for over a decade. 3 days after the internal notice, the academy seemed quieter. Not physically, punches still echoed in the training hall. Footsteps still paced the wooden floors, but spiritually. There was a tension beneath the surface, like everyone was waiting for something to snap. Carl Dawson hadn't been seen since the announcement. Some said he was suspended. Others whispered he'd lawyered up. No one knew for sure. But Nathan Briggs was still there. Still arriving early. Still unlocking storage closets. Still sweeping sweat-stained mats with the same calm rhythm. He said little. Responded when spoken to. Never stayed longer than needed. And yet his presence had changed. Not in volume, but in weight. Jessie Tran felt it most. She'd watched the video 10 times by now, analyzing every angle, every shift of balance. What struck her wasn't the technique. It was the restraint. How many people could have humiliated a man like Carl and chose not to? Her professor had emailed back after reviewing her early thesis draft. "You're not just writing about power dynamics anymore. You're writing about moral authority. Don't stop digging." That was exactly what she intended to do. That evening, Jessie returned to the academy, after hours under the pretense of retrieving her notebook. She found Nathan alone in the equipment room, folding GIs in neat geometric lines. "You ever think about teaching again?" she asked, breaking the quiet. He didn't look up. "I've taught enough. These days, I prefer to listen." "You taught more in 5 minutes than Carl did in a year." Nathan folded another uniform. Then, maybe 5 minutes was enough. Jessie hesitated, then pulled a small folder from her backpack. She set it down on the bench beside him. "It's the full Phoenix Ridge report. Declassified last year. Most people missed it. It was buried in military ethics proceedings. But you should know. They cleared your name. Quietly. No media. No reinstatement. Just a line in a document. Nathan stared at the folder unmoving. You testified against your own commanding officer. Jessie continued. 3 recruits dead, and you were the only one who said what really happened. That should have made you a hero, but instead, they buried you. He finally looked at her. That's what systems do when the truth costs more than silence. Jessie's voice cracked a little. Then, why stay silent now? Nathan held her gaze for a long moment. Because silence is the only thing they don't know how to control. The words hit her like a brick. But before she could respond, the lights in the hall clicked on. Footsteps. 3 people entered the room. 2 wore suits. 1 wore a tracksuit. Carl Dawson. He hadn't looked this put together since the day of the demonstration. But his eyes. They were different now. Tighter. Less fire, more calculation. Evening, Briggs, he said, voice rehearsed. Just wanted to drop by. Seems I've been reinstated pending final review. Jessie looked to Nathan, but his face didn't move. I'm here as a consultant, not instructor. Temporary, of course, Carl added. In the meantime, these gentlemen are helping the Academy review its internal protocol for staff conduct. We're especially interested in your employment file. Nathan's hands paused mid-fold. You're suggesting I'm under investigation? No, Carl said with a smile too wide. Just due diligence. After all, we're responsible for the safety and reputation of this dojo. And someone who dodges punches like that, surely the board would like to know where he learned it. Jessie stepped forward. He hasn't done anything wrong. One of the suited men replied, That's not the question. The question is whether the Academy's liability policies cover a non-instructional staff member engaging in physical demonstrations with clients present. Technically, that breaches insurance terms. Nathan straightened. So now the problem isn't what I did, but who I am. Call it risk management, Carl said with a shrug. And you've become a risk, Mr. Briggs. Jessie opened her mouth, but Nathan gently raised a hand. It's fine, he said quietly. If they want paperwork, give them paperwork. Carl smiled again, but this one held victory. As the 3 men turned to leave, Jessie could see it clearly. This wasn't about safety. It was about revenge. About restoring an ego cracked in front of witnesses. Nathan picked up the folder she had brought him and tucked it under his arm. I didn't come here to teach, he said. But it looks like I'll need to finish the lesson after all. Jessie nodded, swallowing the sudden lump in her throat. Then let me help, she whispered. They tried to erase your name once. I won't let them do it again. What neither of them knew was that across town, a private martial arts forum had already picked up the leaked footage. Over 200,000 views, thousands of comments, and one message pinned at the top. Who is this guy? That wasn't self-defense. That was mastery. What had started as humiliation was now spreading like a fuse in dry grass. But fires once lit don't always burn clean. The pinned comment echoed louder in Jessie's mind than any punch she'd ever seen land. That wasn't self-defense. That was mastery. By the next morning, the clip had crossed 500,000 views. Reddit threads were breaking down Nathan's movements, frame by frame. Former service members chimed in, calling it classic force redirection from Tier 1 combatives. TikTokers reposted it under titles like The Janitor Who Fought Without Fighting. But back at the Academy, none of that mattered. Coach Alvarez called Jessie into his office before noon. His desk was covered in papers, legal letters, HR forms, a printout of the leaked video, and another stack she recognized immediately, Nathan's employment paperwork. This has gotten big, he said, no small talk. Too big, too fast. Jessie sat down slowly. So you're letting him go? Alvarez sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. The board's pushing me. They say he violated a non-engagement clause. But truthfully, they're scared. The comments, the press inquiries, the name Phoenix Ridge is popping up again. And that means attention. Jessie leaned forward. So you're punishing him because he didn't fight? No, Alvarez said, meeting her eyes. I'm punishing him because the world around him refuses to let him go quietly. That afternoon, Nathan received an email. Your contract is suspended pending investigation into unsanctioned engagement and non-disclosure of past combat training. He didn't flinch, didn't argue, just kept sweeping the mats. Jessie was furious. You're just gonna let them bury you again. Nathan looked at her, his voice calm as ever. You think I haven't been buried deeper than this? She didn't respond. But later that night she acted. She uploaded a second video. Not of the fight, but of Nathan in the locker room, folding GIs, fixing loose straps on equipment, helping a young student tie their belt properly. She titled it, "The Man They're Trying to Erase." And the floodgates opened. Within 48 hours, the hashtag Joshua Silent Master trended nationally. Veterans commented in solidarity. He's one of ours, one Marine posted. They iced him for telling the truth. Now they want to do it again. A well-known female UFC fighter reposted the video with the caption, "This man taught more honor in 5 seconds than most senseis do in 5 years. Give him a gym, not a pink slip." The academy's inbox overflowed. Students who'd left under Carl's instruction began sending testimonials. Jessie compiled them into a drive, added quotes from the declassified Phoenix Ridge documents, and attached a letter to the Academy board. You can suspend a man. You can't suspend the truth. But the real turning point came 3 days later. Jessie was walking to campus when she received an email with no subject line. The sender, an old Gmail address. The message, you should talk to Cadet Fisher. He was the 4th recruit at Phoenix Ridge. Jessie's breath caught. The files said 3 died. No mention of a 4th. She called the number attached, not knowing what to expect. A tired voice answered. Fisher speaking. Jessie introduced herself. Silence followed. Then the man said, "You're talking about Briggs." "Yes." "Then you deserve to know something." He paused. They didn't bury him to protect the program. They buried him because he exposed that we were trained to ignore safety. They pushed us. Hard. One night the line blurred. 3 of us didn't make it. I did. Because Briggs broke protocol, pulled me out, took the heat, told the truth. Jessie's hands shook as she wrote everything down. They labeled it an accident, Fisher added. But they knew. They all knew. He saved me, and they punished him for it. Jessie asked if he'd go on record. He hesitated, then said, "If Briggs is fighting again, I'll stand behind him." That night she compiled every document, every video, every statement, and wrote a letter not to the board, but to the Department of Defense's Office of Accountability. This time, they wouldn't bury him. They'd have to bury all of them. The question now wasn't whether Nathan Briggs would be silenced again. The question was whether the system that failed him could survive the noise he was no longer willing to mute. The system had buried him once. But now, the noise was growing louder, and Nathan Briggs wasn't muting it anymore. The morning after Jessie submitted her report to the Department of Defense, she walked into the academy expecting cold shoulders or polite silence. Instead, she walked into applause. Not loud, not dramatic, but enough. Students clapped gently as she passed by the training hall. Some nodded. Others simply looked at her with something that hadn't been there before: respect. Word had spread fast. Cadet Fisher's audio testimony, his voice steady but trembling as he recounted the night Briggs saved his life, had gone viral after Jessie posted a redacted version on X and tagged several military accountability groups. The hashtags Chic Phoenix Ridge and Chi-Chi Justice for Briggs were trending. Even national news outlets started circling. But the real shift came during that evening's class. Coach Alvarez entered the dojo carrying a white folder. His face, usually unreadable, looked heavy. He walked directly to Nathan, who was as always setting up equipment without being asked. "You were right," Alvarez said, voice low. "This place did stop being a dojo the moment we let Carl turn it into a stage." Nathan paused, still holding a stack of clean towels. "You didn't know." "I should have." Alvarez held out the folder. "The board is offering reinstatement, not as janitor, As instructor, advanced philosophy mixed discipline and ethical combat structure. They're calling it the Briggs program. Nathan stared at the folder. He didn't take it. Feels like a gesture, not a correction, he said. Jessie, standing a few feet away, watched him closely. She knew this wasn't about titles. It never had been. For Nathan, dignity wasn't a role, it was the refusal to be manipulated. Alvarez sighed. It's not perfect, but it's something. And Carl's officially resigned. After the footage, and your story, there wasn't much left to defend. Nathan nodded once. But still, he didn't reach for the folder. I'll think about it, he said. That night, Jessie sat alone in the university library, finalizing her thesis edits. Every quote, every visual, every claim was now backed by evidence and testimony. She added one final line to the conclusion: you can't teach character through force, but you can expose cowardice by standing still. She hit submit. Her hands trembled, not from fear, but from the electric sense that this story wasn't just hers anymore. It had become something people needed. But just as she was packing up, her phone buzzed. Unknown number, no message, just a file. It was surveillance footage. Grainy, labeled Dawson, Private Dojo 2020. Jessie frowned and hit play. The clip showed Carl Dawson in a private training session, except he wasn't alone. 2 masked students, recruits. The timestamp matched the period when Carl had gone on retreat before founding the Denver Academy. The techniques he demonstrated were harsh, abusive. One recruit was clearly injured and limping, but Carl kept shouting, pushing him to continue. Another clip followed. This time, audio was clearer. Pain is how we separate contenders from quitters, Carl barked. Jessie's blood ran cold. The sender had attached a text. There's more. He learned that from Phoenix Ridge too. And in that instant, it all clicked. Carl hadn't just been an egotistical instructor. He was a disciple of the very system Nathan had tried to dismantle. He'd absorbed it, modeled it, and built his dojo upon its broken ethics. The next day, Jessie shared the clips with Alvarez. He paled as he watched. This could ruin everything. No, Jessie said. This could rebuild it. They made a decision. That week, the Academy announced a public demonstration. Not a fight. A lesson. Open to the public students' press. Speaker, Nathan Briggs. Topic: why silence shouldn't be the only way to survive. Jessie didn't sleep the night before. The gym was packed. More than just students. Now local veterans, reporters, community leaders. Nathan stood at the center of the mat, not in uniform, not in rank, but in presence. He didn't start with a greeting. He started with a question. How many of you have ever been told to keep your head down and hope the storm passes? Dozens of hands went up. Nathan looked around. And how many of you discovered that silence doesn't always save you? It just teaches people to ignore you. No one moved, but everyone felt it. He continued. I didn't come here to fight, but when they tried to humiliate me in front of students, I remembered something I hadn't in years. Sometimes standing still is a form of resistance. He spoke for 10 minutes. No notes, no theatrics, just truth. And when he finished, no one clapped right away. They just stood, the entire crowd, on their feet. It wasn't celebration. It was recognition. Outside the dojo, the sun was setting. But inside, something was rising. Because Nathan Briggs had just redefined what power looked like. And the system. It was no longer in control of the narrative. The system was no longer in control of the narrative because Nathan Briggs had just reclaimed it with nothing but stillness, memory, and truth. That night, after the standing ovation, no one rushed to leave the dojo. Conversation spilled out into the hallway parking lot and group chats. Jessie watched students who used to treat Nathan like background noise, now lining up to shake his hand. Veterans swapped quiet nods with him, some placing a hand over their heart before walking away. But Nathan didn't seem proud. He seemed tired. Not defeated, but weathered, like a man who just unearthed a version of himself he buried for too long. Jessie stood beside him, her phone buzzing nonstop with media requests and interview invitations. But she didn't open any of them. She just asked softly, "Are you okay?" Nathan didn't answer right away. He looked around the mat at the people at the banners above. That once meant so little, and now felt heavier. "I don't know yet," he said. That night, Jessie uploaded his full speech to YouTube, unedited, titled simply, "Nathan Briggs, Silence is Not Survival." Within 24 hours, it passed 3 million views. Some commenters were angry. Why glorify a man who disobeyed chain of command? Others praised him. This is the kind of veteran story we never get to hear. But most were quiet, liking, sharing, reflecting. The Department of Defense responded next. They issued a short public statement, acknowledging that new material relating to Phoenix Ridge had been brought to their attention, and that they were re-evaluating internal review conclusions. Behind the scenes, a reporter from a major national outlet reached out to Jessie. "You've got something big here," she said. "If this goes public, it could dismantle not just the cover-up, but the entire culture around how we treat whistleblowers." Jessie didn't hesitate. She handed over everything. Meanwhile, the academy had transformed. The Briggs program officially launched a fusion of martial arts training and personal ethics instruction. Each class opened with a 2-minute reflection, not on combat, but on conduct. Respect was no longer preached. It was modeled. And then, one Friday morning, Carl Dawson walked through the doors. He wasn't dressed in his GI. No entourage. Just jeans, a weathered jacket, and a look Jessie couldn't place. Was it shame, defiance? The dojo froze. Nathan was at the far end of the mat, taping down floor seams. He saw Carl. Stood up. Didn't speak. Carl cleared his throat, then walked forward slowly. He stopped a few feet from Nathan, looked him straight in the eye. "I came to say thank you," he said. The room was dead silent. Carl continued, his voice rough. "You showed me what I'd become, and I hated you for it. But you didn't humiliate me. You let me do that myself." Nathan said nothing. Carl looked around the dojo, then back at him. "If it means anything, I resigned from the private school. I've been working with at-risk teens at a community center in Aurora. Not teaching martial arts, just listening." Nathan looked at him for a long moment, then offered a slow nod. "I don't need an apology," he said. "I just need you not to repeat the same mistake with someone else." Carl swallowed hard. "I won't." And then he left. No handshake, no dramatic moment. Just silence. Later that week, Jessie received her final grades. Her thesis had been awarded highest honors. But what meant more was the note attached from her professor: "You didn't just study power. You exposed what happens when it's used right. We're submitting this for national publication." Meanwhile, the DoD report was declassified. For the first time, Nathan's testimony was officially acknowledged. His warning had been valid, his actions justified, his silence never necessary, but tragically strategic. A journalist flew to Denver and asked Nathan if he'd be willing to appear on television. He declined. "I've already said what I needed to say." But when asked what he wanted others to take from his story, he paused, then replied, "I want them to know that sometimes the strongest thing you can do is stand still while someone tries to erase you." The interview went viral. So did a new movement online. Stand Still, a campaign teaching students, especially teens in underserved schools, to speak up, document injustice, and carry themselves with quiet dignity. Jessie was invited to lead the program. She accepted. Months passed. Life resumed. The academy kept growing. Nathan kept teaching. Fewer students asked about his past now. More asked about breathing techniques, how to redirect pressure without force, and what it really meant to win. And every once in a while, he'd pause mid-class, let the silence settle, and just say, "Respect is not in your belt. It's in what you protect when no one's looking." Then he'd go back to training. Nothing flashy, nothing viral, just the steady rhythm of someone who had survived erasure and come back not as a fighter, but as a mirror for others. Because the world didn't need another legend. It needed someone willing to be a lesson.